Greetings, Wilkinson here. Today my guest is David Zecca, and I met David at a social couple months ago, right? No, it was longer than that. How long ago was it?
I think maybe 2 or 3 months ago.
Okay. Anyway, David, say hi to my people.
Hello, people.
Glad to have you. Thanks for coming in.
My pleasure.
So as always, we talk for a few minutes before we do the podcast to kind of get some ideas of what we're going to talk about. I think I'd like you to start because I thought it was interesting. Tell me why you wanted to come in and be on the podcast.
I wanted to be on the podcast because I think that my story is relatable for a lot of LGBTQ people, and I wanted to give them hope for a better life.
That's a nice goal.
Thanks.
It's similar to what I have for the whole podcast, because I always picture somebody listening to this in Podunk, Iowa somewhere.
Yeah.
That has no real reference for, true gay life. And not all my people on here are gay, but I'd say most of them are.
Right.
Let's hear a little bit about you. Where'd you grow up and what was your story?
I grew up pretty much all over the place. I am one of 5 children, the youngest of 5 children. My father was in the Air Force, and we were stationed several places. I was born in Hahn, Germany, a small place up in the mountains, and then we went back to Germany for another call of duty for 4 years.
And where'd you grow up basically though?
Virginia, pretty much Virginia, Washington, D.C. area, Falls Church, around there.
And when you said you're part of the LGBT community, so when did you first think that you were different or you were gay?
When I noticed, probably around the age of 11 or 12, and I noticed that I was more attracted to men. I knew that I was different, but I didn't really know that it was called gay at the time.
Right. So when did you figure out it meant gay?
I found The Joy of Gay Sex, that book, and I read it.
And you were how old?
Probably 13 or 14.
Whoa, okay.
At that time.
Early education.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you thought that was interesting, huh?
Oh, very much so. And I still, to this day, I still have a copy of it because I think it's a great book for gay men.
So what was your coming out story?
Well, I think, as they say, all parents kind of know, and they either go one of two ways. They either hope that it's a phase that the child's going to outgrow, or it comes out. And some parents are grateful that it's come out, and they're happy that their children are living an open, honest life and appreciate them sharing that private part of their life. Or in my situation, it goes terribly the other way. When I came out, I was basically forced out because the book that I was telling you about earlier, I had it hidden in a basket that was flush up against my wall. As a child, I had a bunch of baskets in my bedroom, and they were all nailed to the wall, and I put the book inside one of the baskets on the wall. And my mother, while I was at school one day, did a very thorough search of my room, found that book, and her and my father asked me specifically if I was gay. And I remember my response being, I wish you would have asked me if I were happy rather than if I were gay. And that was my response.
Wow. And how old were you then?
Probably 13.
So 13?
Correct.
So you lived as a gay kid in your parents' house for how long?
Well, we moved into that house when I was 12, and I moved out when I was 18, so 6 years.
But 5 years they knew you were gay.
Yes, but they didn't talk about it.
So she found the book, you talked about it, and then you never talked about it again.
Correct. But I was forced to take a girl to my prom and stuff like that because image was important to my parents, and they wanted it to appear as if they had children that were heterosexual.
Right. So they told you had to take a girl?
Yes. And so I chose a lesbian.
But probably guys weren't going together at that
Correct.
time anyway.
Correct.
Right.
And keep in mind, the school that I went to was basically all white children. There was no one African-American student in the whole school. And I graduated high school in 1982.
Well, it would have been great if you would have found an African-American lesbian to take. That would have been really good. Yeah.
Right.
Huh. So the story continues. So you moved out when you were 18?
Correct.
What happened?
I moved away, I took my parents' car and drove it to the Trailways bus station. I boarded the bus to take me to Norfolk, Virginia, which was 2 hours away. I arrived at a gentleman's condo who seemed to be very interested in me and wanted to be, I guess, partners or boyfriends. But when I got to his condo, he would not give security clearance for the concierge downstairs to let me up into the high-rise building to his unit where he lived. So I was turned away, and I was on the streets of Norfolk, Virginia at 18 with $38.42 in my pocket.
Well, that must have been tough. So that first day, what did you do? Where'd you sleep? What'd you do?
I don't remember where I slept the first day, but I do remember that I was very resourceful in trying to figure out how I was going to stretch $38.42. So back in that time, I could buy a bus pass for a month for $20. I knew that I needed transportation to get me to job interviews and to secure a job. So that's what I spent $20 on. And I really guessed the rest of the money was spent on food or something like that. I don't really remember. But I do know that I got a job within the first 5 days. But I was still homeless because I wouldn't allow the people that employed me to know that I was homeless. My pride would not allow me to admit that I was homeless at 18.
Wow. So you can't remember where you stayed?
Oh, when I got the job, I stayed in the a downstairs like entrance to a church. It was like you walk down these cement stairs, and I slept there at the bottom of the steps. So no one really could see me. And then I got up pretty early and left so that anybody that came around the church wouldn't have seen me. And then I had a locker at the Trailways Greyhound bus station. They had lockers at the time, and I think that's what I spent some of my money on too, to put some of my clothes and stuff like that. And I would clean up in the bathroom at the bus station.
Wow. Well, that is pretty resourceful.
Yeah. I'm really proud of that 18-year-old boy.
Right.
Or should I say man at that time,
Right.
because you become a man at the age of 18.
So what happened next in your life? You kept that job for a while?
I kept that job for a while, and I worked for them. I didn't ask for a pay advance or anything like that. I wouldn't tell them that I was homeless. I stole groceries from the grocery store that was in the same shopping center of the florist that I worked at. And later I went back to that grocery store manager and gave him $100 when I was better. And I told him that I stole fruit from him and that I was sorry that I did that. And I was ashamed of myself for doing that, but I wanted to make it right. And I remember him telling me that no one had ever come to him and admitted that they've stolen from the grocery store. And he gave me back the $100, and he said, I know that you will never steal from me again, and I want us to become friends. And we were friends. I would see him in the grocery store, and I would speak to him, and he was very instrumental in helping build me up, and I appreciated that.
That was my next question, is how did you feel when he said that to you?
I felt really touched by it. I think both his actions and my actions were really kindness, and we don't see much kindness, especially today in this world.
So he believed in you, actually?
Yes.
Huh.
Yes, as did the two gentlemen that I worked for. The two gentlemen that owned the florist were a gay couple, and later in life they told me if I would have told them they had a spare bedroom, that they would have let me sleep in. But I didn't want them to know.
So at some point you did let them know that.
Yes.
Once you got
Once
settled.
I got, right, I got a small little efficiency in Ocean View, and I was self-sustainable then. And so then I told them, I shared that story with them. And I think it's very important to share your truth, no matter how painful it is, because I think we, as human beings, don't like to share the bad things that happen to us. And sometimes I think there is good that arises from those bad things, and that's really what I wanted.
How long did you work for those guys?
Probably close to 5 years.
Then what?
Then I went to work for a department store as a window dresser.
Okay. In which town is this again?
Norfolk, Virginia.
Oh, you're still there?
Yeah.
Okay. How'd you get into that? With the window stuff?
I was very much interested in it, and I met a gentleman who did it, and he kind of helped me get an interview with his manager, and then it just took off.
Uh-huh. So you must have a creative side.
very much so. I feel like I am one of those gay people that has been truly gifted with a lot of things. I've done interior design, floral design. I'm an artist. I've done painting and ceramic work. I was a stylist for people and would dress them for special occasions and stuff. So yeah, I would consider myself to be extremely talented, and I'm very grateful for that. The only thing I really can't do is sing because I'm tone deaf.
Uh-oh. Me too.
Kind of sad, but I'm okay with that.
No one wants to hear me sing, trust me.
Right. When I worked as a waiter, they would ask me to come to the table, but not sing Happy Birthday, just lip sync it. And I was okay with that.
You were in a crowd of other employees, right? Singing.
Right.
Were you good at lip syncing?
Yeah.
No one called you out on it?
No, I was a good decoy.
That's pretty cool. So at some point you must have been a wait person.
I was, yeah. I was in the restaurant industry a lot too.
Is that in Norfolk?
Yes. Uh-huh.
Okay. When did you leave that town?
I don't really remember, but I moved to Washington, D.C. because I was offered a job to be the visual director at Bloomingdale's at White Flint Mall in Maryland. And so I moved to Washington, D.C., and I really didn't like Washington, D.C. and wasn't there long. And then I moved to Richmond, Virginia, where I lived for a while, and then I moved to Atlanta, Georgia, where is mostly where I live.
I'm geographically handicapped, so Richmond, Virginia. Did you keep that same job with Bloomingdale's, or is that a different thing?
No, at that point, I left and decided to do a business for myself. And so I built a business of cleaning homes, and then I built it and had other people working for me. And then I opened a pretty big business called Man Made, the #1 maid service for messy men. And I geared it toward, professional doctors, lawyers, anesthesiologists, stuff like that were my clients. And I made a lot of money, but it worked me to death. And that is really what made me decide to sell the business and then move to Atlanta, Georgia.
Were you like a personal assistant type thing in cleaning and everything their places? Is that what you did for these people?
I don't see anybody doing what I did at the time. I would take their laundry to my house. I would do their laundry. I would fold it up. It was folded really nice. It was all tied off in red satin ribbon. Underwear was neatly folded in individual packages and stuff like that. And then I would take it to their house when I went to clean. And I had 3 washers and 3 dryers, and they were going 24 hours a day. I would get up in the middle of the night to do it. And I had 4 or 5 other people that were working for me as housekeepers. It was a very lucrative business. When I sold it, I had 8 people wanting to buy it, and the person who purchased it offered me $10,000 over the asking price just to beat the other competitors out.
Wow.
Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah, I was really proud of that business because I really marketed it well, and stuff like that. So it was written up in several papers and stuff like that. It was quite a really catchy business.
Why Atlanta?
Because the business was driving me crazy. I almost had a breakdown. I had a good friend who I went to college with at VCU, and he suggested that I sell the business and move to Atlanta, where he had relocated to. So I got in the shower, and through tremendous amounts of tears, I decided that was the right move to make. So I sold the business and packed up what I could carry in a cargo van, and we drove from Richmond, Virginia to Atlanta, Georgia.
How long were you there?
In Atlanta, Georgia, 31 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
So most of your adult life.
Yes. Yeah. That's why some people today can still say they detect a little Southern accent. I don't hear it, but they say they do. So it might be there a little bit.
Maybe a tad. It's like my Buffalo thing comes out once in a while. Buffalo, New York.
And I picked up some things like Southerners say, instead of saying turn off the light, they say cut out the light.
Right.
Or, I'm going to carry mama to I remember the first time someone said, I'm going to carry my mama to the store. I was like, what happened to her? And they said, nothing happened to her. And I didn't realize that carry her to the store meant like taking her in the car. But it's just the Southern twang or slang or whatever you want to say. And you start to pick it up.
Wow.
Yep.
There are little weird things people say.
Yeah.
I was in Seattle once, and this something happened where somebody did something very quickly, and the guy said, "Oh, he did it like a hog on a hare." And I go, "What in the hell does that mean?" And he explained to me he was in Oklahoma, and they were pig farmers, and they'd have the pigs in the pig pen, and they would find a rabbit and throw it into the pig pen, and the pigs would just go nuts getting it and devouring it live. But I mean, they were like on it, like boom.
Right.
So that's what it meant. So hog on a hair, that's what that means for you trivia folks out there. So primarily what'd you do in Atlanta?
Primarily in Atlanta, I worked restaurant industry, several florists. Then I opened up my own florist for a while. And then I sold that actually to a Korean woman who ran it into the ground. And then I started interior design business because, as luck would have it, I was working for a floral interior design shop in Alpharetta, Georgia. And Pebbles, who was a recording artist, came in, and I ended up doing her and her husband's house, decorating it. And they owned a recording studio in Atlanta called LaFace Records, which is L.A. Reid, who was Pebbles' husband at the time, and Babyface. And that's how it became out, LaFace Records. And so I did L.A. Reid's house, and then Babyface asked me to do his house, so I decorated his house. And then it just started rolling. I started doing, stuff for Bernie and Billy Marcus. I started doing John Smoltz, Chris Chandler, the Falcon quarterback, different people like that. And so it really built up because I was really good at what I did. And I made a lot of people that were, really professional interior designers and ASID and stuff like that, really angry because I had a great business with great clientele.
I was going to say, had you done that before?
No, I have no formal training. I did not. My degree is in commercial art. Pretty useless.
It's like my English lit degree. Man,
Yeah.
I think it's worth, I checked, it's like worth $89 today.
Right.
But, whatever. So they asked you to decorate a house?
Correct.
Why?
Because they had seen some work that I had done, and we just built a friendship. I really didn't know who this woman was, and it wasn't until later I found out who she was, and they asked me to do it. And, I think that's, a lot of people get what they call their big break, and that was really my big break.
Did you have any doubts that you could do it?
None. And to this day, I say with confidence and not arrogance that I'm really good at it.
That's kind of jumping in the deep end of the pool there.
I guess, but it just comes natural to me. Like I can walk into a home or something that's totally empty and I can see it totally finished. I see exactly what I want to do. I can see problems. I fixed a huge home for someone that lived in a 78,000 square foot home.
What?
It was a gentleman.
That's almost 2 acres, by the way.
Yeah, it's huge. It was huge. They had a dining room that sat 32. They had a racquetball court in their home. They had a game room that looked like something you'd see at a casino. They had slot machines and pinball machines and pool tables. They had an old ship that they let their children play on. It was huge. But the decorator who did it before me didn't know what they were doing, and so I went in and I fixed it.
Oh.
So, yeah, it was huge. I have pictures of that house. It looked like, when you drove up to it, it looked like the Biltmore Estate in Asheville, North Carolina.
So what was the price tag to redo that place?
I didn't think it was that much because I didn't really purchase furniture. We didn't really do much furniture. It was
like
really
big stuff around,
moving stuff around and doing some stuff. I remember she had a dinner party and she was having Raymond Simone and some other celebrities that were going to be there, and she didn't even have china for 32 people. So I had to go out and buy a set of china for 32 people. It was just amazing how people buy a big house and then they don't realize the upkeep or what needs to make it complete and finished.
Right. So you knew how to do place settings and all that?
Yeah, I do pretty much, everything.
Where did you learn that?
I don't know.
Guessing from your military family, they probably did.
My parents were Italian Catholics, and we lived in a house with plastic on the furniture and lampshades with the cellophane still on it.
Oh, I hadn't thought about that.
Plastic runners going down the hallway.
Oh my God.
Yeah. No, I come from a family of not great taste. So yeah, I wonder how it just happened to be, but it just came.
Maybe that's why you got into the florist business. I'm sure.
And I've been in publications.
They had plastic flowers, right? Your folks?
Oh, yeah. They had all kinds of stuff. Yeah. Yeah. Well, my first job was in a florist through a vocational school, making 50 cents an hour because we had a VOTEC school that was attached to our high school, and I took horticulture. And so to get out of school early, I had to have a job. And so I worked at Colonial House of Flowers, and I made $2.50 an hour.
Wow.
Yeah, big bucks. Yeah.
Now you just mentioned publishing. What's that all about?
It's really weird. When you do interior design work, and a lot of people don't know this, publications will ask if they can photograph one of your projects, and you really want to do that because it gives you a lot of exposure and notoriety. And so I said yes, but they can hold on to those pictures for as long as they want until they decide to publish it. And that's what they did with one of the homes that I decorated in Atlanta. They photographed it and they held it and sat on it for almost 2 years. And then it was published in Atlanta Homes and Lifestyles magazine.
So you didn't write the article then?
No, I did not.
So you were published, your work was published.
Correct.
Any gay stories from Atlanta that are interesting? Gay life there?
You know, I think one thing I noticed about gay life in Atlanta, I find the people the gay men to be a little bit friendlier because they weren't really friendly in Washington, D.C. area. And I think that's just people in general. You know, they'd bump into the subway and they wouldn't say, excuse me, or anything like that. And I find the South to be, for the most part, very warm and welcoming and inviting. And that was good. You know, it's a big gay city and has a big gay pride festival and lots of things. So I was very active in that. And I sat on the board of PFLAG, Parents, Families, and Friends of Lesbians and Gays. And I felt like that was a great honor to really give back and to help parents who are struggling finding out that they have a gay or lesbian or trans child. So I was really happy with that. I like living in Atlanta.
Did you?
Yeah, I would probably still be there today if the apartment building didn't get torn down and a high-rise building get built. My landlord was like a father to me. I still speak to him. I still send him emails.
Really?
I mean, that's really rare that you find a landlord that you really love. And he was very generous and kind to us. He never really raised the rent. I think the rent raised maybe once or twice in the 30 years that I lived there.
You lived in the same place for 30 years?
Yes.
Really?
Yes. People find that bizarre, but yes, it was really an amazing community. It was only 12 apartments, but the people that I lived with were like actors and actresses. And, you know, 2 of them were the voices of 2 characters on the show Archer that was on FX for many years. Several of them were in national ad campaigns for like T-Mobile, and I'd see them on the TV. But we were very much like a Melrose Place kind of community. We were all very friendly and would do cookouts, and at night we would go down in the courtyard and all sit down there and just, you know, chat and have a few drinks and enjoy one another. It was a really great community. I would still be living there today if that apartment was still there.
Wow, that sounds really incredible. So have you been single, partnered? What's your story there?
I was single for a lot of years, and I was really okay with being single. And as they say, life happens when you're making plans for something else. I bought a condo in Palm Springs, where I am now, and I got a dog during the COVID outbreak, right before COVID, because I knew I was getting a little bit depressed, and I needed a dog kind of to give me a reason to get up out of the bed and to do stuff. And I really got a great dog, and so I was happy. You know, I really wasn't looking for a man. I certainly wasn't on the apps, wasn't on Match.com, any of that stuff. And then I went to a party, and I saw what is now my fiancé, soon-to-be husband, and I just watched him the first time because I like to watch people. And I watched him, and I didn't approach him. And then these gentlemen had a party like a month later, and I went back to that party, and he was there. And I waited till about the end of the party, and then I approached him in the pool, and we went on a date, and then it just all fell into place. I mean, I can honestly say that this comes along like very rare for someone. I have someone who absolutely thinks I hung the moon, thinks I am the most handsome man in the world, and I want him to keep believing that, and treats me like I've never been treated before. And so I'm very grateful for that. And I'm really happy. And I told a friend of mine the other day, you don't really know what you need or want or miss until you have it. And I'm so grateful now that I have a partner that will be by my side as we go through the late years of being gay.
What's his first name?
Doug.
Doug. So what do you like most about Doug? besides what you just mentioned?
He's just a very remarkable, giving person. And I think that's very hard to find in someone. We're going on now 2.5 years. We've never once had a fight where we've raised our voice at one another or anything. Now we'll get in little weird spaces or something, but that passes pretty quickly. And so the one thing that I'm most proud of is, though, that I never settled in my values of what was necessary for me to be in a relationship, where I think so many guys, or women for that matter, whoever wants to be in a relationship, will chip away at themselves and saying, okay, well, I'll accept this, I'll accept that, I'll accept this, where I'd had bad relationships in the past. I had an alcoholic as a partner, and so I knew that alcoholism or drug addiction wasn't acceptable in my value structure. And so when you start weeding out those people, your pot of people to choose from becomes smaller and smaller. And so I knew that I either had to give up a whole lot to get someone in my life, or I had to be okay with being single. For me, I chose single, which I thought was the better route. Now that I'm in a relationship, it is the right relationship, and I have had to sacrifice nothing.
Is Doug a native here, or did he move from somewhere else?
No, Doug was in a relationship of 18 years, and his partner, he was going to move. They had a condo in San Francisco, a condo where they just sold in San Francisco. Then they had a condo in Palm Springs, and he had bought a condo in San Diego. And so his partner, when they bought the condo in San Diego or something, he said, I think it's best that you stay here or whatever. And that's how he broke up with them. Wow. Which was kind of sad. But in the long run, as he says, it all worked out for the better, because he says he's never loved someone like he loves me, which I'm glad it worked out for him.
What are you doing with yourself now here?
Well, I was retired, and then I found retirement very boring.
Why? I'm not surprised. Why?
And, you say all this stuff that you want to do, like I'm an artist, and you think, oh, I'll paint, I'll do all this stuff. But then when you're retired, it allows you to just be lazy and not really do a lot of stuff. And so I knew I wanted to continue to be active and stuff like that. So I did some volunteer work for a while.
Well, that's where we met.
Right.
You were volunteering at that social group.
Right. Well, I volunteered at Revival, the local thrift store, for a year until I got assaulted by a customer, and they didn't want to do anything about it. So I decided to quit. I decided that wasn't a good fit. And I really am shocked at how people are not respected when they volunteer or give of their time freely. It's amazing to me in this day and age and in this society how many people take things for granted. And so that's disappointing, and it cuts away. And I think that's why it's so hard to find volunteers, because so many people have gotten burned, or, it hasn't worked for them. And that's really kind of sad, because then, like myself, I've cut back on the amount of volunteer work that I do for it to better fit my life. But then on the other hand, I really wish my life could be used of more service for others.
Well, David, I've got to say you had a shitload of interesting jobs over your life. And we talked before, and I think there's a couple more things we need to flesh out here before we go away. So what else did you do in your life for a job? What haven't we talked about?
Well, I don't think we've spoken about my career as a sex worker and an escort.
No, we didn't. How long did you do that?
I would say probably 8 years.
Wow. What got you into that?
Well, I got into it twice. The first time, a depositionary warrant on my apartment, and I needed to make some money, and I needed to make some money fast, because as I said before, I have never asked anybody for a dime, and so I've always been self-supportive and self-sufficient. And so I knew that sex sold. And so I took a little ad out in this little periodical in Atlanta called Etc. magazine. It was geared towards the gay community. And I ran an ad, and that started. And then I did that with a friend of mine, and he and I would do it together. So we would be cheaper as a pair rather than just one. And we did that for safety reasons. So we would both go spend some time with an individual until he got really not good at the business. Like you could tell when people were serious about hiring you and people that weren't. And he'd go on wild goose chases and the person wouldn't be there, hotel rooms that didn't exist, stuff like that. And so I got out of the business with him and started just doing it by myself. Then I stopped. And then years later, I got back into it because I was in a relationship with a man that wasn't self-supporting, and I ended up having to support him financially, and that was a big old mess, but I got into it again then. But in actuality, I look back at that as a real blessing because I really enjoyed it. It was the one career I had in my life that I was the most valued and appreciated and respected. The one thing I think most people need to know is what kept me in the business, because I was going to get out of it. I had a call at the Intercontinental Hotel in Atlanta. I showed up, and the person opened the door, and you couldn't see past them at all. They were morbidly obese, and I say probably they weighed in excess of 400 pounds. The first thing out of his mouth was, he said, "You can go, you can leave if you want." And my heart broke at that moment because I could see the sadness in this person's face. And I said, "No, I'm not going to leave." I said, "But we're going to rediscuss some things." And we did. And I ended up having an intimate time with him, even though it was difficult. I was glad I could do it. And when I got done, this gentleman cried. He looked at me and he said, "Thank you so much." He said, "I haven't had someone touch me intimately in over 7 years." And that just really touched me. And that let me know that that was the job that I needed to do so that I could bring intimate touch to people who so desperately needed it.
Wow. Make me tear up a little bit again.
Well, I want
you and your stories.
Well, a lot of people see sex work as a dirty or filthy or disgusting business, and it really isn't. And they might be surprised at how many people use the services that we provide.
Human connection.
Absolutely.
Before we go, you told me you've got a lot of ink on you, don't you?
I sure do. And if I was younger, I would have had more. Yeah, I love tattoos.
Tell me about a couple of them.
Well, I think the most important tattoo is I have a little salamander, gecko, kind of lizard, I guess you could say, in my armpit.
Oh, no.
Yeah,
That's got to be one of the most painful places you could get inked. Oh.
It is. It is very painful. And actually, when I went to get it done, the guy thought that I couldn't do it. And he said, "Let me just hit you in the armpit with a needle one time." And I said, "Okay." He said, "Without any ink." And he did it, and it hurt. I mean, it hurt. And I said, "Well, let me go outside for a minute." So I went outside the tattoo shop. Then I came back in. I said, "Okay, I'm going to do it." And he said, "Okay, well, here's the rules." He said, "You're going to pay up front." He said, "If you chicken out 5 minutes into it, I'm keeping all the money." And I said, "That sounds like a fair deal to me. Let's go for it." So he started doing it, and I mean, it hurt. And I screamed at the top of my lungs, "F you." And then the tattoo artist looked back at me and he said, "F you." So we just kept cussing at each other because we were the only two in the shop.
Right.
And when he got done, he gave me a high five and he goes, "You're the man." He goes, "I never thought you could do it." And I said, "Man, thank you so much for getting me through it." He goes, "It was great." He said, "You just knew how to tunnel through the pain." And I said, "I sure did." And I did it because the tattoo represents the young boy who suffered so much as a child growing up gay that I carry that boy under my armpit. I'm safe. Pardon if I'm a little teared up, but I think about it all the time.
Wow.
So that's
Great.
why I love ink, because it's usually very personal for people.
Right.
People just, I'm not going to say nobody puts on some ridiculous, tattoo for no reason, but most of them have some type of meaning. And I love them.
I photograph people, and that's one of the things that just shocks me sometimes. I mean, you have like a guy that's just, gorgeous, but really looking at the ink on him, it looks like he went into the tat store on sale day and went through a catalog. It says, "Oh, Mickey Mouse here. Let's put a mountain over there." It's like, wow, nothing's related, nothing has meaning, and it's all over their bodies. And it's like, wow.
But if the person has to have a certain look. But I will say that sometimes when I see what I call trash tattoos, it's kind of sexy to me.
Yeah.
I'm kind of attracted to that guy that looks like he should be thrown in jail and has some prison tattoos or something. I don't know what it is about that. But yes, I've seen some where they look really bad.
Well, I like the bad boy look, don't get me wrong, but just some of them are like, whoa. What were you thinking?
Right. Oh, yeah. Like people that have gotten Donald Trump tattooed on them or something like that, or like face tattoos and stuff like that. But, life's about choices. We can let them choose what works for them and we'll choose what works for us.
All right. I'm glad we included this part in here.
All right.
So I usually end these things by asking the person sitting in that chair, what are a couple lessons in your life that you'd like to reiterate to my listeners?
Well, for me, I just think this world is going in the wrong direction. And I think people alone have the power to fix it. But I find that we live in a society of people who just want to take and really are not givers and don't want to do the hard work that it's going to take to turn this around. And I really think that we are headed for some really sad and despairing times ahead. And I hope to wake people up about climate change, about kindness in this world. I think our last administration really fanned the flames for hate and racism and bigotry to rise up again. And I want to do what I can do to stop that. I want to try to stop the hatred towards the LGBTQ trans community. I see trans people really suffering now, and I really hope that changes. And, the one thing that I really keep rooted in my brain after seeing the movie Schindler's List is the power of one person. And so I share my story, I share my voice to empower other people to rise up and to what I call fight the good fight for a better country, a better society with more kindness and just, a better place to live, a kinder, better world to live in.
You're a good guy, David.
I try to be. I have lots of ways that I can improve, but I try to get up every morning with a sense of, do the right thing, be the change that you need to see. And I really try to do at least one act of kindness, even if that's just to tell someone, wow, you look really nice today, or I love that shirt, or thank you so much for helping me. I would tell the people at the grocery store every time I checked out during the pandemic, thank you so much for doing the essential work and keeping people fed and showing up. I really appreciate it. And I think if people just do little bits of that, it embeds in your brain to be kinder and nicer.
Thank you for sharing.
Certainly, it's been my pleasure. It's my pleasure.
Good. Thank you.
You're welcome.